You know that feeling, right? Just drowning in information. You need to really understand something, get under the skin of it. But it's so easy now with everything online, AI tools, you get these quick answers.
Yeah, instant answers.
But what's the real cost? Like, to our minds, our learning, do we even feel like we own what we create anymore?
That's a huge question today, isn't it? It feels that we have superpowers with all this info. But does easy access mean real understanding? Or just, a feeling of knowing?
Exactly. And that is precisely what we're digging into today. There's this fascinating new study, really rigorous stuff. It looked at how using different tools, think ChatGPT or just Google or, well, nothing at all, how that actually changes our brains, how we learn, and yeah, that feeling of ownership.
And our mission here is really to cut through all the noise for you, our listener.
Well,
We want to unpack the actual data from this study
right.
because there are some genuinely surprising insights about, what's happening upstairs, cognitive engagement, brain activity, and what it means when we use these tools for complex stuff, like writing an essay.
Okay, so let's unpack this study setup. It's pretty crucial for understanding the results.
For sure.
They got 54 adults aged 18 to 39 from top universities around Boston. So a smart group, undergrads, postgrads, researchers.
A good mix, academically speaking.
Yeah.
And gender-wise, too. Mostly female, but a decent spread.
And they randomly split them into 3 groups for writing essays. Group 1, the LLM group.
Right. They could only use OpenAI's GPT 4.0. Nothing else. No browsers, no other apps.
Strict.
Then Group 2, the search engine group. They could use the web, Google mainly, but absolutely no LLMs.
And they were careful, too. They even added AI to searches to try and filter out AI results.
Smart. Okay, and Group 3.
The brain-only group. No online tools, no LLMs, just their own thoughts.
Well, tough assignment. And they all wrote essays over 4 months, right? On topics like loyalty, happiness, choices, philanthropy, art.
Yeah.
Yeah, meaty subjects.
Yeah.
But here's the really groundbreaking part. They used EEG headsets.
Ah, the brain reading caps.
Exactly. Electroencephalography. Fancy term. But it basically records the electrical activity in the brain, showing what parts are firing and connecting.
So you can literally see the brain working.
Pretty much. And they combine that EEG data with analyzing the essays themselves. Language patterns plus interviews afterwards. So you get this really rich picture of cognitive engagement, mental effort, what's actually happening neurally.
Okay, this is where it gets really juicy. The EEG findings. What did they see in terms of brain connections?
Well, there was this really clear trend. They called it a scaling down effect. Basically, the more external help someone had,
The less their brain did.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
The less connected different parts of their brain seemed to be. The brain-only group. They showed the strongest, most widespread connections. Their brains were really buzzing.
Makes sense.
The search engine group was somewhere in the middle, intermediate engagement.
And the LLM group.
That's the kicker. LLM assistance led to the weakest overall brain connectivity. We're talking up to a 55% reduction in total connections compared to the brain-only folks.
55%.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's not a small difference.
No, it's really significant. It suggests major cognitive offloading. The brain's just not engaging in the same way when the AI is doing some of the heavy lifting.
So if we dive deeper, LLM versus brain only, what about specific brain waves, like alpha waves?
Right, so the brain-only group showed much stronger activity in the alpha band. Alpha is often linked to things like internal focus, creativity, brainstorming, pulling ideas from your own memory.
So more internal idea generation.
Exactly. Their brains seem to be in that deep, internally driven thinking mode.
And theta waves, I know those are linked to memory and control.
Yeah, working memory, executive functions, juggling information in your head.
Yeah.
Again, the brain-only group had much higher theta activity. Strong connections, especially front to back and between hemispheres.
It's suggesting more mental effort, right? More cognitive load.
Precisely. They were really working to hold and manipulate ideas. The LLM group, though, uniformly lower theta activity. It fits with the idea that the AI was reducing that working memory burden.
And you mentioned information flow. That sounds fascinating.
It is. The brain-only group showed more bottom-up flow.
Yeah.
Think of it like deeper brain regions generating novel ideas and feeding them up to the frontal areas for execution.
Kind of originating ideas.
Right. Whereas the LLM group showed more top-down flow. The frontal brain seemed more focused on integrating and filtering what the tool was providing, more like editing than originating.
Okay, interesting distinction. Now, what about the search engine users compared to brain only? Still a difference there.
Oh yeah, a bit more nuance, but definitely still there. Brain only still showed stronger alpha and theta overall. So more internal focus, more memory integration, deeper engagement than the searchers.
Does that connect to the Google effect idea that
Yeah.
we don't remember things as well if we know we can just look them up?
It seems highly related, yes. That lower alpha activity in the search group could absolutely reflect less reliance on internal memory because, well, Google's right there. You remember where the info is, not the info itself.
Right, right.
And another thing, the brain-only group also showed way more activity in the delta band that's linked to like big picture integration of ideas.
Yeah.
That was mostly missing in the search engine group, suggesting they were maybe more focused externally on finding the next piece of info rather than deep synthesis.
Okay, so the brain activity paints a clear picture, but what about the output? The essays themselves, did these differences show up in the writing?
Absolutely. The linguistic analysis, the qualitative stuff, it lines up really well. Get this. The LLM group's essays were very similar to each other, statistically homogeneous within each topic.
Less variation.
Way less variation compared to the other groups.
Hmm.
But the brain-only group, huge variability. You could really see individual approaches, unique takes on the prompts.
That makes sense, I guess, if you're all using the same tool. But what about ownership? Did people feel like the essays were theirs?
That's a huge one. The LLM group consistently reported low ownership. Some people, especially early on, actually said they felt no ownership at all.
Wow, no ownership. That's quite a statement.
Isn't it? The search engine group felt strong ownership, but still noticeably less than the brain-only group. They almost all claimed full ownership session after session.
And did this affect recall? Could they remember what they wrote?
Another key finding, the LLM group was significantly worse at quoting lines from their own essays just minutes after writing them.
Really?
Yeah. Compared to brain-only and search engine users who are much better at it, it's almost like if your brain didn't do the work to generate it, it doesn't tag it for retention the same way.
That is powerful. So let's talk about the actual words, the Enneagram analysis. Any interesting patterns there?
Yeah, some cool specifics came out, like the phrase perfect society, everyone used it a bit, but the search engine group used it most, brain-only at least.
Hmm.
The brain-only group had unique phrases like multiple choices or increased choices,
Yeah.
very internally focused, maybe.
Interesting.
Search engine users had distinct phrases too, like homeless person or moral obligation, maybe reflecting common search results or themes.
Could be. And the LLM group.
They had their own specific ones like teach children. But here's a really neat observation. Remember, they had some people switch groups later.
Right, session 4.
So people who had used the LLM and then had to write without it the LLM to brain group. They often reused phrases like before speaking that the main LLM group had used earlier.
Ah, like an echo, a bias from the tool.
Exactly. It suggests that a kind of previous LLM bias lingered, influencing how they wrote even when unaided. The tool's pattern stuck with them.
Which really brings up that whole issue of echo chambers and bias, doesn't it? Did the study touch on that?
It did explicitly. It found that the conversational LLM systems actually made it easier to fall into selective exposure compared to regular search.
How so?
Because LLMs are designed to give you the most probable or, often agreeable output. They can end up just reinforcing what you already think, leading you down these biased paths without you even realizing it sometimes.
And it wasn't just the LLMs causing bias, right? Search engines have their own issues.
For sure. The search engine group showed signs of the classic filter bubble, like the philanthropy essays mentioning homeless more than giving. That could easily be influenced by what search ads or optimized content gets pushed to the top. The tool subtly shapes your focus.
It's a reminder that no tool is truly neutral.
Definitely not. And here's another fascinating bit. They had an AI judge grade the essays alongside human teachers.
Okay.
The AI judge tended to score essays around a 4,
Yeah.
but the human teachers, they leaned lower, often between 3 and 4. And they strongly disagreed with the AI on the quality of the content. AI might give a 4, humans might give it a 1 or 2.
Whoa, that's a massive gap in judgment.
Huge. And get this, the AI flagged almost half the essays as potentially AI written, but the human teachers, they couldn't reliably tell.
So the AI can spot its own kind, but humans can't.
Seems that way, at least in this setup. And teachers also consistently rated the essays as less unique than the AI judge did. The AI thought they were more original than the humans did.
It really highlights how differently we might perceive quality and originality compared to an algorithm.
Totally. There's still a big disconnect there.
Okay, but what about that tool switching in session 4? That sounds like a crucial part of the study. What happened when the LLM users had to write without the tool?
Right, the LLM to brain participants. Their brain activity was really interesting. It didn't just snap back to how a beginner would look, nor did it look like someone who'd always used only their brain.
It was somewhere in between.
Exactly, an intermediate state. Specifically, activity related to internal planning, reasoning, working memory, those alpha and beta bands was significantly lower than the peaks seen in the regular brain-only folks.
So the previous LLM use seemed to dampen those functions.
That's the implication. Because the tool reduced the cognitive load before, the brain didn't recruit those resources as strongly when left on its own. It hadn't had the practice.
But not all activity was lower.
No. Activity linked to semantic retrieval, sustained attention theta and delta bands stayed relatively high, sometimes almost as high as the brain-only group.
What does that suggest?
It suggests they were actively trying to pull information, maybe remembering stuff the AI had given them, and really focusing hard to compensate for not having the tool. Working hard, but perhaps differently.
So there's a real trade-off. You might get the essay done with AI, but you're not building those underlying cognitive muscles in the same way.
That seems to be the crux of it. Competency without the full cognitive workout, leading to less coordinated effort when you have to go solo.
Okay, now flip it. What about the brain-only people who then got to use the LLM, the brain-to-LLM group?
Their brains lit up. A significant increase in connectivity across all the frequency bands when they used the LLM on a topic they'd already thought about.
So adding the tool boosted their brain activity.
It seemed to. It suggests that for someone who already has those strong internal processes established, interacting with the AI prompted high levels of integration, memory reactivation, maybe comparing their ideas to the AI's. A very active engagement.
And they used the tool differently too, didn't they?
Yes, they wrote more specific, fine-tuned prompts, a bit like how the search engine group formulated queries. They were more sophisticated in how they interacted with the LLM from the get-go.
So the big takeaway here is our brains adapt. Really adapt.
That's the message, loud and clear. If we consistently let AI do the high-level planning, the synthesis, our brains might just allocate fewer resources to those skills over time.
Which leads to those slightly scary terms from the study, cognitive atrophy.
Yeah, like unused muscles getting weaker, and metacognitive laziness, becoming less aware of our own thinking processes because the tool handles so much.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, what are the broader implications for us, for how we work and learn?
Well, it suggests that while LLMs are amazing for reducing immediate effort and boosting efficiency, there's a potential downside for critical thinking, deep analysis, and solving problems independently.
It encourages more passive consumption, maybe, instead of active wrestling with ideas?
That seems to be the risk.
Yeah.
And it ties back to memory, again, that Google effect, but maybe on steroids with LLMs. We get better at finding, perhaps, but maybe worse at actually knowing and retaining information internally.
And you mentioned the energy cost earlier, too.
Right. Often overlooked, but significant.
Wow.
An LLM query uses roughly 10 times the energy of a standard web search. That adds up.
So given all this, what does it suggest for education? How should we integrate these powerful tools?
The study hints at a model where maybe we delay introducing AI tools, at least for certain tasks. Let learners first really grapple with the material themselves, build those cognitive foundations through self-driven effort.
Build the mental muscle first.
Exactly. That way, you might get the best of both worlds. The ability to use the tool effectively later, but also the lasting cognitive autonomy, the internal capacity.
It leaves us with a lot to think about, doesn't it?
It really does. It's this fundamental question. AI gives us effortless knowledge, unprecedented convenience. But this research shows a tangible neurological flip side. What's the real value of that effortless knowledge?
And how do we make sure convenience doesn't accidentally shrink our capacity for the deep, messy, effortful thinking that makes us, well, us? How do we design our lives, our learning, to keep those uniquely human processes strong?
Finding that balance, that's the challenge ahead, I think. Using the tools wisely without letting them diminish the user.